Today, on My First Concert. Kavi, let me ask you about you've had some of your arrangements, some of your compositions featured on radio, on TV. Yeah. I mean, can you tell us about those experiences and maybe when the first time it happened to you?
Sure, yeah. I think the most salient one that comes to mind is I wrote a theme song for a show on NPR. It was a show, my friend Diane Halsey approached me and said, hey, I don't like what they've kind of contracted for this music thing. Can you write something kind of specific? And the show was about talking about race to young kids of color. And they wanted it to be more uplifting and positive, and especially to parents. And so I think her example was the song called Wake Up Everybody. I can't remember who it's by, but I remember being very soulful, very kind of 80s vibe. And so I wrote a song called, oops, I have to remember the name of the song now.
Oh, I thought you were going to do a Britney Spears number on us. Oops, I did it again there for a minute. Kavyesh Kaviraj is our guest today, and those of you around Minnesota that know music know his name well. Not only a great composer, a great piano player, but also a very good session player for a lot of people here in town. And if you were out at the recently talked about Jazz Fest, where we talked about that not long ago, Davide, here on the show, we learned a lot about that. He was recently out there in the rain. You were there engineering in the rain. Davide Razzo is our producer. Dave Lee here. It's all brought to you by Star Bank, and also by our friends at Aquarius Home Services here from the AquariusHomeservices.com studios. Kavi, thanks for coming in. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. My pleasure.
And I'm glad you and Davide survived the rainfall at Jazz Fest.
Yeah.
We did, and I put a post out on my social media. He was playing the song Rain, and so he caused the rain. It was beautiful. It wasn't raining at all, and all of a sudden the rain was coming down. Thanks, Kavi.
Oh, well, if it was my doing, sorry. But it was funny, as I was announcing the tune, I remember looking out in the audience and going, all right, this tune is called Rain. And then I looked up and realized it was going to rain. But it was quite beautiful to play that song and have that happen in that moment.
Oh, yeah.
I looked behind me, Andrea Cantor, the great Andrea Cantor, the photographer of the Jazz Fest, was behind me, and I asked the audience, are you getting rained on? I'm getting rained on a little bit. And she turns and she goes, yeah, it's your fault. And I just go, my bad.
Everybody blames Kavi.
Trying to get the crowd fired up and everybody's mad because it's raining because of your song. No, that's great. I hope that got filmed and photographed. That would really be a great shot, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, Kavi, let's talk about your first concert. What was it? Do you remember? Among the first.
Of concert styles that I remember now, big concert halls. I think I remember when I was 3, because my dad's a piano player and a composer. He had me, it's kind of stay behind the scenes while he was playing and accompanying these singers. I think there were about 1,000 people, something like that. It was for some organization in Oman, which is where I was born. And it was an Indian association of people. And I remember crying, asking, hey, I want to sing. Can I sing this song? I want to sing. And so I think they were sort of trying to get my hopes down, but I was being very adamant. And so the time came that my dad's like, no, let them finish, and then you can go on, okay? Let them finish. And so he handed me the mic, and as I started singing, they cut off the mains. That was the first memory I have. I was, my dad and my mom encouraged me to kind of sing a lot when I was young. I was playing piano, but a lot of the singing happened when I was young. I don't sing anymore, thank God. But I remember a lot of young concerts, just being on stage from a very, very, very kind of tender age. But also from another standpoint, the first like real concert I saw probably was like Snarky Puppy in India when I was probably like 2015 or something like that. you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a Minnesotan band played in India.
Well, Snarky Puppy, I know they have Minnesotan roots, but
They do have Minnesotan roots, I believe.
Yeah. I knew them from like the college North Texas, the University of North Texas. But yeah, they were there. They were just starting to blow up on YouTube, and I remember it was a concert in Mumbai, and that was the first time they'd ever played in India. And I'd expected no one to know about this band, and here we were at a music festival, like thousands of people clapping along to Lingus, and I was just like, wow, this is unreal,
Yeah.
And I was hanging around with a few really prominent musicians. I was, all of 18 years old, so I was just kind of in awe of all of this happening. But yeah, that's the first like modern concert I can remember, or jazz concert for that matter.
What were the concerts like in Mumbai?
So I think I first went to Mumbai when I was 18, and I was traveling with a band that we were playing with. Consisted of a few of my teachers at a school that I was studying in. So when we went there, it was this particular jazz festival, which was new to Mumbai. Mumbai is kind of like a socialite area of India, very much like a New York, if you imagine, different than anything you'd ever see in any part of India, very much almost American-like, it's a gathering of people. There's food and there's music in different stages, and there's always something to look for, but in Mumbai, I remember being like surrounded by like skyscrapers. It was this giant field surrounded by many stages, and I also remember there being a lot of people that we read about in the papers, and movie stars and singers and all these things, yeah, it was quite a different experience from, let's say, Chennai, where I grew up in, or where I kind of ended up.
So, like in Europe,
Yeah.
when you go to a concert, you have general admission.
Yeah.
So you can go and stand right in front of stage if you want.
Yeah.
Unless you are sitting in the seats that those seats are assigned.
Right.
Here, when I came over here, you had even seats in the general admission area.
Yeah.
Mostly. And how was that in India? It's the same as in Europe?
I remember there being like a VIP area, but they were still standing,
Yeah.
In general, I think Indian concerts have sort of tiers, and they're always separated by like ticket price, or like there are barriers that, oh, you stay here because you paid $15, or you stay here because you played $25. At this concert, I just remember seeing like wristbands. That was all, So there was probably, I want to say, like a few hundred people who got to go backstage and meet the band. And because I was hanging with the cool musicians, they gave me one. I wasn't even of age yet, so they were like, we're going to sneak you in and no one will know. And so, yeah, that's what I remember. But we were still standing in the back because I think they'd told me the best spot in the house was to stand like somewhere near the last third of the house, and they were absolutely right. Yeah,
and the sound was great.
Sound was amazing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, hip hop, gospel, R&B, funk, you do it all. But what were you listening to as you were growing up? Now, your parents were music educators, obviously a piano player. So what kind of music were you indoctrinated to kind of before you branched out to all these other things?
Yeah. It's interesting. My father's very well versed in Carnatic music, which is the South Indian tradition. Very much their classical music, and so we were sort of immersed in our house all the time. There was Carnatic music playing, but there's also the aspect of my dad being, well versed in the Western European kind of classical musics as well. So he would have me listen to like Beethoven and Mozart, and I would try to like plunk it out when I was young. I think there is a lot of Hindustani music, which is the northern Indian tradition. I took lessons for that for a long time. He had some bubblegum pop record like ABBA.
Oh,
He had like Carpenters. What else did he have? I think he had some Frank Sinatra. I like what caught for me was a lot of the Carpenters and ABBA stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, and that was, I was still listening to things on like cassette players, or like we didn't have a vinyl player, but I used to see them all the time in his little collection. Yeah, and then kind of growing up, I think I found more like 2000s pop. My friends would bring me these little pen drives, flash drives.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would put it in my computer and then download all of it. Oh, before that was like floppy disks, which is even funnier.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Oh,
get
yeah.
like
Yeah.
4 or 5 songs in one floppy disk or whatever. But yeah, that was a lot of my younger childhood. I did a lot of I think late teens. I was listening to like alternative rock or something. I remember all of it kind of very well, but it was just a blur of all kinds of music.
Yeah, well, which has obviously paid benefits for you now,
Yeah.
because you can do it all too.
Yeah.
Kaviraj is our guest here on My First Concert. A lot of questions for him here, including the transition from growing up in Oman to coming here to become a Minnesotan, and a big part of our Minnesota music scene, which Davide and I love talking about here, because there's a lot of talent in this area, and it just continues to thrive.
Yeah.
Generations prior, and now the younger generation coming in and just getting it done. And a big thank you to our sponsors. We've got so many good people. We're broadcasting from the Aquarius Home Services studios today, and Jeff Doherty and I have been friends for over 2 decades. And I remember when Jeff was just starting out in the business, and we became very close, very good friends. And to this very day, I use his services at my home, AquariusHomeservices.com. And the beauty of this is that they do everything. So home services covers a lot of territory. Maybe it's your plumbing, maybe it's air conditioning. I had them put a new unit in just a couple of years ago. I suffer from allergies, and there's things you can learn that they can do there, which is really intriguing. The water, of course, we talk about Connecticut water, and when I think about a home, the very first thing you really should think about, and we probably don't, we want to know, about a lot of cosmetics, but your water really is number one, because you're going to use it every day in all sorts of ways. And they have the cleanest water. And when you get these stories on the news about water and their problems with it, they're well versed in all that, and they can pretty much answer any questions you might be concerned about. But the Connecticut water's been fabulous. But whether it's, by the way, make sure you get your air conditioners and furnaces tuned up every year by them too, because that'll make them last a lot longer. Because those aren't cheap, as you know, when you get a new one, and you want it to last as long as you can. So have them come over. I do that every year, all the time. So. They're really good at what they do. It is proven by, you see some of the results that they get from polls and all that sort of thing. They're just great, and I love them, and I can speak from the heart when I talk about their home services. And now power generators, that might be a concern. They have that. Just look them up, AquariusHomeservices.com. They really want to earn your business. That's what they do. And it's been so much fun to have them here on the show. I always say they believe in earning the right to be recommended. Just go to AquariusHomeservices.com. and then find out what I'm talking about. But I love to tell you about them because it's who I use. Kaviraj is with us here. He's a great piano player. He's also an instructor at several places, an adjunct professor, I think still at St. Thomas, Kavi, right?
Yep, that's correct, yeah.
But let me ask you about getting involved in the Minnesota music scene. How did it take us through that whole process of where you came from Oman to Minnesota?
Yeah, of course.
And we know it wasn't the weather.
It wasn't the weather.
No.
Well, when I was about 14 or 15, something like that, I moved to India to go to boarding school. And that was for a very serious engineering school pursuit. We sort of call it pre-college. They really prep you to get into some of the best schools in India, which is very rigorous. And I thought I wanted to do that. And so I went of my own volition. My mom was like, "You want to go?" It's the school I went to. So I was like, sure, let's do it. And I was, in India, they were in Oman, and they didn't get to visit very often. So I didn't have much family in the area. We're from Kerala, and this is on Chennai, so West Coast and the East Coast. So I was just very lonely out there, but I made plenty of friends, but I also realized I'm definitely not home right now. So I learned a lot of things, but that's when I figured out, I don't really want to do the engineering thing. The best part about that was getting to be at the hostel kind of home situation where after your chores or whatever they're done, I could get to write music on this tiny little keyboard that I had, and I had one guitar there too. So I did that the whole time and sort of started getting wise to the idea that I might have to be a musician sometime. Funnily enough, I didn't do that immediately after school. I went to 1 year of engineering college, and it was a spectacular misstep. Not because I really liked it. I liked the engineering and I liked the scientific curiosity. My mom's a math teacher too. But what I didn't see was the same kind of scientific curiosity or practical application of any of the theory that we were studying, and it's very rigorous and sometimes very political. So I happened to fall ill at that time too. That's when I knew I had to get out of there. And so for a brief period of time, I had like a 5-year plan for my life, go to engineering school, get a job, make this much money, and all fell apart. So I think I was sort of having a crisis of faith, and my parents were like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I should do music. And, I think my dad was sort of curious if I would go that way. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of encouraged me and told me, find what you want to do, see if you can find a scholarship. We'll try and get you there, And so I went to the school in India for a year. It was a very remote school. They had like teachers from the US come there all the time. And that school had a sister school here in St. Paul called McNally Smith College of Music.
No kidding. Yeah. Wow.
We don't speak of it because it sort of shut down while I was there. It was one of the best schools that I'd ever been to, because I've been here and there.
You're right.
And it was just incredible. I came here one January, without a snow jacket,
in January,
proper shoes, never seen snow before.
Oh boy!
And walked out of the car to no snow, and just said, "Oh, it's fine. I'm just gonna go to sleep." And I woke up at 10 p.m. thinking, "There's still restaurants open in downtown St. Paul, right?" Nothing, and it's just there's about 6 inches of snow on the ground, and I'm just walking through it, and folks are looking at me like, is he okay?
Yeah. Are you lost?
And so, I had lots of professors who really looked out for me.
Yeah.
And I really kind of fell in love with who is here and the kind of music that they were making. Because for me, jazz was such a new phenomenon. I wanted to come to America to study it, but I also knew I needed kind of like an incubator.
Sure.
To be kind of developing and also kind of learn how to be a musician in not jazz, because I think the Twin Cities has one of the best scenes in the world to be a versatile musician. Anything you want, you can find your way into it. Like, people won't really try and push you into a corner or a label, And so I really got to experience that in the time that I was here. And
were you surprised at all about the talent level in Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Slightly, yes, because when you think about big music cities in the U.S., at least from the lens that I'd never been to the U.S. until that point. You think of L.A. or Boston and New York, or where the big schools are,
sure.
Where the big players are.
Yeah.
Didn't really know what I was signing up for. I did some like YouTube research or whatever. But then once you come here and you witness what's happening. It's much larger than life, you know. There's so much of a depth of the players who live here. Also, the community who are here too. Like, I've never experienced such a group of musicians who really care about what you're doing musically, and they're not trying to like knock you down, or they're not trying to compete with your space, and also are very collaborative with the art form that you're creating too. You know, I mean, I go see my cohorts all the time, and just inspired endlessly by them. So yeah, it was a bit of a surprise, but now in hindsight, no, not at all.
Yeah.
You know,
It all meant to happen. Engineering school was supposed to happen. I mean, it just directed you in the right direction, obviously.
Yeah.
But some of the collaborations, as long as you mentioned collaborations, you've collaborated with some really high-end talent out there. Can you tell us about some of those?
Sure, yeah. I think one of the first artists I got to collaborate here was with Jamesia Bennett, who is from the Sounds of Blackness.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just incredible, you know. And Kevin Washington, the drummer, was the drummer who got me the gig. And I got to really, you know, walk in and play like a 2-hour set of music. It was very challenging. Later on, I got to work with Desdemona, who's a local hip-hop icon. You know, several other folks. Like, I remember playing for Roosevelt Collier, who was traveling and came here and called me for a gig, and that was excellent. A couple of years ago, I got to play with Wynton Marsalis, who was here, just one of the greatest trumpet players alive, greatest jazz musicians alive, and very honored to be in his band.
Did that make you nervous at all?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah. I have to tell you, he's a very magnanimous personality. Also, he's like one of the most recorded jazz artists, you know, and he was sort of an elder statesman to us all. And I remember just thinking to myself, the musicians that were playing with me were some younger students, and I remember kind of having them around in sort of classes that I was teaching, and I realized, okay, if I lose this, they're gonna fall apart completely. So I might have to be the middle ground here. But they did fantastically, of course, they did amazingly, but I was sort of thinking to myself, keep it together, you know.
Yeah.
And he was very, very kind, and he had some really beautiful things to say, and he made amazing music. I remember he does this thing where he walks out into the audience and he plays. It's a very New Orleans thing, and I sort of had my jaw open because I was amazed, how are you playing these things while you're walking around the room? And, you know, of course, when that happens, you might drop a beat or two, and it's like, oh, okay. You know, and also when he's listening to what you're doing, he's a very intense stare. You know, he stares at you like this. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if that meant
what that meant.
Is this good or bad?
Yeah, but he did like what I was doing. He was very kind, had some really beautiful words to say. So yeah, that was
what an experience.
Bucket list experience.
Let me go back though, because you referenced you had to go out and play for 2 hours. Was that Kevin Washington who had set that up?
Yeah.
And so what did you know what you were going to play? Did you know what was going to be happening, or was that just that kind of nerve-wracking as well?
It was nerve-wracking because one thing I realized was like what we were doing in the rehearsals, where we were arranging the songs, you know, and Jamesia and Kevin, and that particular concert, Jamesia was sharing the stage with B.B. Bennett, who's was on the RuPaul show and excellent performer, artist, singer. But they were coming up with these things together, you know, and so I had to always be listening, always be recording. But, you know, I'm sort of used to that, just being around music all the time, just realizing things aren't always the way they are. So it was kind of comforting to know some things don't change, at least in my life, you know.
Well, and you know what you're doing. I mean,
Thank you.
Musically, you know what you're doing. Even when you got to ad lib, it seems to work out pretty well. Davide, one of the great things about your job as a music producer is you get to record a lot of sessions, work with a lot of players. We've talked to a number of them.
Yeah.
But Kavi's another one of those in demand
Yes.
musicians.
Kavi is. And I mean, I think I met you first time I think I saw you here recording for someone in one of the 1,000 sessions that are
Yeah,
happening back in Studio A here at
Yes.
Creation Audio. But I think our path more crossed on the live stages.
I think so.
Me working for KBM, engineering you guys and mixing you live
Yeah.
to broadcast, and
Yeah.
in several. Like I think the first gig I saw you was with Kevin Washington
I see.
with his was it his Raw Spirit?
Yes.
David Feely was on it too.
Yep.
Omar,
Yeah.
Abdul Karim
Yeah.
was on trumpet. I forgot. Was it? It wasn't Jeff Bailey on bass, was it?
It may have been. Kevin's had Jeff Bailey,
Yeah.
but also Jonathan Bikure, who's an incredible bass
Yeah.
player as well. So I can't remember.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's been great to see you with not just with Kevin, but you also played in different constellations of musicians here in town on a stage for KBM, and it's always, to me, it's always like a pleasure to hear you play, and
Oh, thank you.
it's like it's incredible.
Thank you.
So-
Yeah, level of talent, like we're talking about, is so good here, and is a great example who we're talking to right now. Kavi, let me ask you about you've had some of your arrangements, some of your compositions featured on radio, on TV. I mean, can you tell us about those experiences, and maybe when the first time it happened to you?
Sure. Yeah, I think the most salient one that comes to mind is I wrote a theme song for a show on NPR. It was a show. My friend Diane Halsey approached me and said, "Hey, I think I don't like what they've kind of contracted for this music thing. Can you write something kind of specific?" And the show was about talking about race to young kids of color. And they wanted it to be more uplifting and positive, and especially to parents. And so I think her example was the song called Wake Up Everybody. I can't remember who it's by, but I remember being very soulful, very kind of 80s vibe. And so I wrote a song called, oops, I have to remember the name of the song now.
Oh, I thought you were going to do a Britney Spears number on us. Oops, I did it again there for a minute. But
What would that? But I can't remember. It'll come to me. But I called Omar and I said, "Do you want to play some trumpet on this track? I think it would be kind of amazing for you to play a solo, play the melody on this." And so yeah, we recorded it and it went on the show. It became the theme song of the podcast, and that was really awesome. Yeah.
oh, no kidding, yeah.
Yeah. But I think, writing for media is amazing because you have to be very keen about what sort of clientele you're working for, what's the show about. And then also realizing that there's other things that are happening. There's, if it's for TV, there's definitely something on the screen. You have to be thinking about not overshadowing, and so it's a very specific skill set, and you have to have all your tools sort of sharpened for all of that.
Do you see that down the road? Movies, TV shows, will that continue?
Yeah, I would love to. I have to say, don't know what's next yet. I'm just sort of trusting the process, but I do love being musician, sort of in many worlds.
Oh yeah, you've got a great
Thank you.
array. No doubt about that.
Thank you, yeah.
Have how often do your folks get back here?
They try to come every year.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. They
In the summer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course. It's funny. Summers here aren't really warm to them. This year, particularly, they're kind of perplexed. It's like, what's going on with the rain thing going on?
Yeah.
There was a few years where they couldn't come because of the pandemic, and I was sort of getting back on my feet, sort of in that moment too. They're currently here. They're staying in my house with me and my sister. 2-bedroom apartment, so we're all kind of crammed in there, but it's lovely. It's really amazing. And they went from parents who don't know what I'm doing musically to
Yeah.
sort of understanding what I'm currently doing musically, which is amazing.
I would think the conversation between you and them regarding music, because with accomplished musicians in the house and you doing what you're doing, do they offer any input, or are they just
do.
supportive? I mean, they just say, hey, why don't you try this or that?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
You know, of course, my father is a very prolific sort of a keyboardist and theorist, but also they have not been immersed in the jazz world. So I'm the first conduit for them to discover it. And so at first it was very foreign to them. And I remember them kind of imploring me to sort of include Indian music, you know, the music of my childhood into jazz. Or, you know, it's not, I don't want to say they were like, why aren't you doing this kind of thing?
Correct.
It's definitely not that, but they were sort of encouraging me to find a way to do that. I didn't quite figure it out when they were initially bringing it up, because it's hard, you know, the two worlds are very different. And so now as I've sort of stepped into that cultural identity, they recognize it more, you know, but also I think they've had time to listen to my music a little bit more, and they're really great cheerleaders. And they also kind of, I call them my publicists, because I'm very bad at social media. So they try to promote everything that I do.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So they share your stuff.
Yeah, and they're how people find me on Facebook, which is kind of neat.
Let me ask you about performances around. Are there any that stand out, kind of right out? I'm not going to ask you for the best, but above the others.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I remember during grad school, we got to go to the Panama Jazz Festival, and that was a week of us as Berklee grad students being ambassadors for the festival. So we were teaching master classes, we were playing with the youngins, we were playing with the main stage artists, and there were several concerts that we had to be part of. I remember one playing for the great Latin jazz artist David Sanchez, and that was amazing. There was thousands of people there, and it was quite a lifetime experience, because his music is incredible. But I will also share that was the day that I decided to buy an iPad Pro, because it was outdoor. You might have seen this there. You know, there was a piano, and we had music on here. We were all playing each other's original music, and great gust of wind.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah, and you know,
It happened to us like 2 weeks ago. We had a pop-up concert.
of course.
Abinet was playing,
Oh, sure.
and all of his musicians brought sheet music.
Yeah.
And the sheet music was flying around.
Everywhere. Yeah, and you know, then what I realized was, okay, we're glad we're friends and we know each other's music, because I was just sort of like, okay, I know this is fine. And, you know, the whole while my friend who's backstage was just kind of coming up and helping gather the music. So I'm sort of like half playing a solo and half thanking him. And I was like, okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Puts the music on the music stand. It's the wrong song.
Yes.
And also, you know, like, for me also, I was sort of in the zone, and then I just get interrupted by on my face. So that day I decided, you know what? Paper is outdoor, at least. It's a little risky.
Well, it could be worse too. It's just putting it upside down, and all of a sudden you would play the opposite.
Oh man, that's a Victor Borge bit. I don't know if you know that comedian.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
great
yeah.
Victor
That's why I brought
Borge.
it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, well, who are your piano icons? Who would you? I mean, obviously, the keyboard was influenced by your father, but
Yeah.
well, no, hang on to that. I'm taking a break, because here's what I'm going to have you do, Kavi.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, I want you to think about, you're the promoter.
Yeah.
You're going to do a concert. You can have 3 entertainers on the stage that night.
Yeah.
I'm real curious who you would put up there.
Yeah.
So think about that. And you mentioned Victor Borgen. Man, he'd be a great
We
opening
also
night.
need to talk about his new album too.
Yeah, the new album comes out here in July.
Yes.
Yeah,
July.
so for sure we will.
Yeah.
We want to thank our friends over at Star Bank making this all possible too. Just great people over there. Talk about Minnesota talent. They started out with one bank here in the state a number of years ago. The same family now has 10, including right here in the metro. And the only reason that happens is because they're good at what they do. They're very personable. They get that small town feel even right here in the metro. And Star Bank does a really great job with their communities because I know they're so supportive. You'll see that when you go into the communities they're in. And their products are tailored to assist you with everything. So there's a million things going on. We all have something different we want or need. It might be something personal. It might be for a business. They've been all through that process many, many, many times, whether it be a loan or anything to do with personal or business banking. And I know a lot of us like to do it digitally. Makes sense, right? It's easy right there on your phone or your iPad Pro or whatever it might be. But I will tell you that when you go into their banks, they're very personable. They're going to get to know you. I'll tell you that for sure. And then there's a pretty good chance, I think, that you're going to know who they are the next time you see them. So you can call them and say, hey, I talked to so-and-so, and they'll remember it. It's just got the small town feel. And you know that when you call because they answer the phone with a live person, which is a rarity these days. So I'd call Star Bank today, or I'd go online at star.bank. Loans are subject to a loan application and approval. They're a member FDIC and equal housing lender. And they're our bank here at talknorth.com. So we're practicing what we preach. Hey, before we talk about who you're going to have on stage, Davide, thanks for reminding me because I was going to bring up the beginning, and of course, in the conversation, I've been listening to you, fascinating, which is my problem, I guess. I need to take care of that. But let's talk about the new album because is it July 12th that comes out?
July 12th, yes.
And
it's called Fables. It's about all of the stories of my life sort of unfolding in this album. I wanted to sort of parallel a storybook, like when you read Aesop's Fables, for example. Every story has a moral, so to speak, So I wanted every song in the story to have that as well. And so I write about songs from, my childhood growing up in Oman, and I write about like my parents' story, and I write about what it's like to be a teacher in the U.S. now, and having been born to two teachers, what that's like. I write about, what I'd like the world to be, and how I found hope within music and all those kind of subjects. So it's a little bit of a compendium of all the things that has happened in my life.
how did you select the artists to perform with you?
Oh, that was easy. These are four of my greatest mentors that I hired to play. It's Jeff Bailey on bass, Kevin Washington on drums, Pete Whitman on tenor and soprano sax, and Omar Abdul Karim, trumpet and flugelhorn. Story goes that I played in their bands since I got here, and so it was natural that I wanted them to be along with me on this journey.
How long's the process taken?
Maybe 8 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I wanted to write or put out or present into the world, just because I think a little bit of it was tied into my cultural identity. If I didn't really know where or which world to belong into, especially as an Indian person, being a practitioner in the jazz world currently, it's a tough thing to figure out which world to belong to,
Yeah.
Especially like as a child of immigrants in a Middle Eastern country, and then moving to India sort of by myself, and then here, unfinished kind of identity discoveries were going on. And so I just told myself I'm just going to be of service to other artists. I'm going to be somebody that they enjoy collaborating, working with, and I'll just sort of be in their musical journey, help them however I could, till I learned what it's like to do that for myself, And so, it took 8 years, but, in hindsight, I wouldn't have it any other way. If I rushed it, it would have been as cathartic for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you like being here in Minnesota.
Oh, I love being here in
Yeah.
Minnesota. Well, if everything works out, I'll be here for the rest of my life. And, but it's just so welcoming. Not only are the musicians and my friends and colleagues and all of them so wonderful, but also the audiences here are very, very, very into the musicians and the music that comes out of Minnesota. There's more of a curiosity and there's more of an engagement here than in other cities. They're very interested. I feel very embraced.
Yeah. It's a great community for the arts, no doubt about it. Kaviraj is our guest. And before I let you go, and the new album comes out July 12th, I really appreciate your time. And I know that your time is valuable as you're required on a lot of sessions, which is a great compliment to your work on the piano. By the way, are you still playing guitar once in a while?
Oh, gosh. I have the best guitar playing friends, so I can't really claim that I play guitar around them.
Yeah.
It's just a personal study for me.
Yeah.
There's a few tracks that I just placed each finger on and then strummed. But no, I can't claim that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you just play piano then on your record, or
Yeah.
did you try to play other instruments on it?
Mostly piano and Rhodes, but there's some tracks with a lot of layers on it. Yeah, a bunch of keyboard layers, not on anything else. Yeah.
So you're going to promote a concert. You have the opportunity to pick the 3 stars of the show. Who would you put up there based on your love of jazz and so many other genres? I mean,
Of course.
you've done everything, and you seem intrigued and to enjoy everything.
Of course.
So now, how do you select 3 people?
Yeah, well, this is tough because now I have to not only stay in the realm of piano or jazz. Now it's open to everything.
Everything, live or not.
Yeah. Well, let me start with Shakti. Shakti is this group by John McLaughlin, the great guitar player. He sort of was a founding member of this ensemble, Shakti, where he brought 4 other Indian musicians. And so it's the best fusion of Indian music with jazz that I've ever heard. It's incredible. Yeah, they were they're still around. They're very prominent in the 70s and the 80s. Yeah, so that's probably the first act. Next has to be Herbie Hancock, and just because I'm in this era, I'm just going to say the Headhunters era. That's my
Your go-to.
currently. Yeah, I say that music is always seasonal for me, so these favorites and other things, they always kind of shift around. So right now I'm just devouring kind of that era thrust in Headhunters and Sunlight and all that good stuff. And maybe finally I think I should do, there's Dream Theater was a big influence of mine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If I had to pick like a bit more like deep end kind of act,
Yeah.
it would be, there's an offshoot of that band called Liquid Tension Experiment, which is 3 of those band members and the bass player from King Crimson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were way in that progressive
Yeah.
music.
I was, yeah, I definitely was.
Wow.
And I don't get to play it much these days, but I really kind of got a lot from that. It was cool.
Kavi, if people want to see you, where do they go? A website? Do you have social media they can take a
Yes.
peek at and find the new album on the 12th?
Yes, of course. KavyeshKaviraj.com is my website. And so there's a music video for a single that's out right now. And that song is called Smoke of the Midnight Lamp. So that's on my social media, my website. You can also find a pre-order link to the album, which is lovely. And finally, we're doing a release concert on the 12th at the Dakota, which is sort of a culmination of all these topics. And it's going to be amazing because my sister is animating all the stories and we're narrating it and scoring it with the soundtrack. And
Nice.
she'll dance on it. It'll be this multidisciplinary kind of show. And so, yeah, it'll be the first time the album feels fully complete.
And the Dakota will be a lovely place to
Oh, we love the Dakota.
play. Yeah, we love going there a lot as well. Kavyesh, Kaviraj. And again, just check him out on all the social medias. And well, really appreciate your time. Congrats on 8 years of work coming out here in just a couple of weeks. Pretty darn exciting.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is super amazing.
Oh, yeah, it was great having you. Congrats on everything that's happened, too, and continued success not only in the music, but in the education world.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Davide, good to see you as always. Appreciate your time here on a busy. You've had a busy couple of weeks with Jazz Fest and everything else. So thanks for sneaking me in here to the studios today.
Thanks.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
And you and I will chat again.
Yeah,
sometime down the road. So I appreciate everything you've done here on these shows for the last. Gosh, I don't know, over a year now is it we've been together somewhere in that vicinity.
Over a year.
Yeah. So. Which has gone quick for me. Probably a long journey for you having to work with me, but pretty quick for me.
It was always. It's nice working with you.
And you can go to Spotify or Apple and pick up some of the previous podcasts. The musicians have just been fabulous. The fans have been terrific. There's great stories there. So when you get a chance at your leisure, just go to My First Concert with Dave Lee, Apple, Spotify, or TalkNorth.com. It's brought to you from the AquariusHomeservices.com studio. Jeff and his great crew over there, and Star.bank, which is a wonderful place to do business. And by the way, let me give a shout out to Creation Audio, where we've recorded most of these shows, which is a wonderful historical recording studio here right in the heart of Minneapolis. And our friend Steve Weiss, of course, was on and talked a lot about the history here with the Guess Who and Paula Abdul, and the Jonas Brothers have done some stuff here. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So it's been a great place to do this. Davide, we'll talk soon. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Okay, there you go. The pride of Basel, Switzerland. And thank you for joining us here today on My First Concert with Dave Lee. And we'll see you around the bend somewhere. Thanks.